Welcome to today's Explainer. Right now, we're living through what I can only describe as a massive global stress test. Today, we're going to unpack how the absolute latest developments in tech, diplomacy, and climate are revealing a world where our boundless digital ambitions are suddenly and violently crashing headfirst into hard physical limits.
So, let's start with a bit of a puzzle. What do a $250 billion AI deal, falling global oil prices, and intense European wildfires actually have in common? I mean, at first glance, absolutely nothing, right? But the hidden answer here is feedback loops. As we're about to see, strain in just one of these systems acts exactly like a falling domino, instantly putting immense pressure on all the others. We aren't just dealing with isolated news stories anymore, we're looking at critical breaking points happening literally at the exact same time across the globe.
Here's our roadmap for the Explainer. Section 1, the AI financial stress test. 2, global diplomacy and energy. 3, extreme weather and health. And 4, navigating the changing economy.
Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, the AI financial stress test, where markets are demanding measurable returns.
For the past year, we've basically lived in an era of automatic enthusiasm. Investors were enthusiastically throwing cash at long-term AI infrastructure, deeply trusting the promises of tech giants like Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, and Apple. But, well, the music is pausing, the market is waking up with a bit of a hangover and demanding a conventional reality check. They want to see measurable cloud and AI revenue right now, not just vague promises that these multi-billion-dollar server farms will eventually pay off. The market is shifting toward a much more traditional, hard-nosed examination of competition, financing, and actual operating returns.
To put this sudden shift into perspective, $250 billion. That is the staggering financing guarantee NVIDIA is reportedly considering for an OpenAI data center project. And actually, additional discussions even involve OpenAI buying up to $350 billion in NVIDIA hardware down the line. Now remember, that isn't just software money magically floating in the cloud. That represents concrete, steel, and energy. It requires massive construction capacity, a huge drain on local, reliable electricity, and a gigantic bet that the demand for all this computing power won't just suddenly dry up.
Which brings us to this highly controversial idea of circular financing. This is coming under intense scrutiny across the AI space right now. Imagine it like this. You spot your buddy a massive loan specifically so they can buy your own stuff. If NVIDIA guarantees a supplier loan to help finance OpenAI's massive hardware purchases, they're essentially just financing their own revenue. Sure, it looks absolutely great for the sales numbers, but it transfers an enormous amount of risk right back onto NVIDIA's own balance sheet. Lenders are finally catching on to this loop, and they're drawing a hard line between healthy tech growth and dangerous credit risk.
And the ripple effect of this AI reality check, it was immediate and it was brutal. South Korea's major stock index, the Kospi, fell more than 10%. That actually triggered a super rare market circuit breaker to just halt trading and stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei dropped roughly 4.4%. Investors are deeply spooked, actively reassessing the profitability of this entire AI infrastructure boom, and the resulting tech-led sell-off has been incredibly fast.
Adding fuel to the fire, we're seeing intense emergent competition from China. The Chinese memory chipmaker CXMT just had an $8.6 billion debut in Shanghai, briefly making it China's most valuable listed company. But even more concerning for Western markets are reports that China is making huge strides in deep ultraviolet lithography. If you're not familiar, think of lithography as the highly complex printing process used to etch microscopic circuits onto silicon chips. A viable domestic Chinese system directly pressures foreign heavyweights like the Dutch company ASML, mostly because it could drastically reduce China's long-term reliance on foreign tech to build out their own AI future.
All right, moving on to Section 2, global diplomacy and energy, balancing security and supply.
Meanwhile, over in the physical commodity world, oil has actually shifted from crisis pricing to diplomatic pricing. Despite all the ongoing global tensions, Brent crude recently dropped roughly 5% to just under $84 a barrel, hitting a two-week low. What's fascinating about this is that this massive, highly tangible market is reacting in real time to backroom diplomatic maneuvers. It's essentially surrendering the major price spikes that we saw during the latest military flare-ups in the Middle East.
Behind the scenes, we're seeing widening diplomatic efforts frantically scrambling to stabilize global security without explicitly taking sides. For instance, an informal pause on airstrikes between the US and Iran is holding for now. Over in the Gulf, Oman and neighboring states are pushing an unwritten agreement to keep commercial ships moving safely through the highly contested Strait of Hormuz. And in Washington, former President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky recently discussed potential peace pathways with Russia. That discussion included a really intriguing proposal to actually help Ukraine manufacture their own Patriot missile interceptors locally, rather than relying strictly on imports.
But here's the crucial reality check. Even if diplomacy succeeds and ordinary shipping resumes, the physical threats to our energy grid don't just magically vanish. We saw this starkly when a recent Houthi attack forced Saudi Aramco to completely shut down its Jizan refinery. So, diplomacy might be successfully cooling the stock market for the moment, but the physical, explosive risks to energy transport in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Red Sea, they remain a daily, incredibly real threat to the global supply chain.
Okay, let's pivot to the physical world in Section 3, Extreme Weather and Health, Environmental and Biological Feedback Loops.
If you want a literal example of a feedback loop, just look to the skies over the recent wildfires in France and Spain. These fires are burning with such intense heat that they're creating what are called pyrocumulonimbus clouds. The disaster is quite literally generating its own weather system. The rising smoke and extreme heat form clouds that actively produce severe winds and dry lightning, which then strike the Earth and ignite brand new fires miles away from the original perimeter. It's this terrifying, self-sustaining cycle where the disaster just fuels its own expansion.
And while extreme weather threatens our environment, we're facing an equally dangerous biological vulnerability. National coverage for the MMR vaccine, that's the one protecting against measles, mumps, and rubella, has dropped to 92.5%, leaving 7.5% vulnerable. Why do a few percentage points matter so much? Because when coverage dips below a critical threshold, local communities lose their herd immunity. The population effectively acts like dry tinder, becoming highly vulnerable to rapid outbreaks of totally preventable diseases.
And that drop in protection correlates directly to a truly startling reality. The United States just recorded 2,318 measles cases. That marks the absolute highest annual total we have seen in 35 years. It's a stark, real-world reminder that our physical health infrastructure is just as fragile and honestly just as critical to maintain as our digital data centers or global energy grids.
Our public health systems are just being aggressively squeezed from every possible angle right now. In Michigan, health officials are scrambling to manage over 8,100 cases of cyclosporiasis. This is a severe intestinal illness linked to produce, and it requires intense, microscopic tracing of our food supply chains. Meanwhile, smoke from those self-fueling wildfires we just talked about, it's traveling thousands of miles, causing sudden spikes in emergency room visits for asthma, heart attacks, and strokes way beyond the actual fire lines. Add in extreme global heat waves that literally prevent the human body from safely cooling down and recovering overnight, and you've got a medical system stretched to its absolute limit.
Finally, let's look at Section 4, Navigating the Changing Economy, the Physical Foundation of the Digital Future.
Here is the ultimate irony of our modern era. The purely digital AI boom actually relies entirely on hard physical labor. You can't just build a multi-billion-dollar AI data center in the cloud. It requires power commitments measured in gigawatts. It demands actual armies of construction workers to pour the concrete, master electricians to wire incredibly complex facilities, cooling specialists to prevent the servers from literally melting down, and utility engineers to manage the massive, unprecedented draw on our local power grids.
So what you should really take away from this is a blueprint for the future of work. The most resilient, future-proof careers are going to belong to the people who can bridge the gap between digital technology and physical reality. If you're an AI security expert, you absolutely must understand physical network controls. If you're a financial analyst, you need to grasp supply chain logistics and construction delays. Pure software skills are great, for sure, but the ability to connect that software to a physical factory floor, a global shipping lane, or a local power grid, that is where the real durable value lies in this new economy. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question. Can our boundless technological and economic ambitions actually outpace the very real physical limits of our climate and geopolitical stability? We are quickly learning that you absolutely cannot have a digital AI revolution without physical copper wire, reliable electricity, and stable global supply chains. Every single system is intimately connected, so think about how your own industry fits into this massive web. Thanks so much for exploring these interconnected realities with me today, and keep questioning how the physical world ultimately shapes our digital future.